The Honda Navi is a very interesting machine. I want to talk to you about fuel and mileage, miles per gallon, that you can get with the Honda Navi. And I'll use some actual numbers here. So, the Honda Navi sat in the dealer for quite a few years, and the carburetor got gummed up because the new fuels that we use, the new gasolines, some of them have ethanol added to it. And the problem with ethanol is it absorbs water and creates sludge in the fuel tank and the fuel system. So if you're storing it during the winter, you want a full gas tank, but you also want to put some fuel stabilizer in, mix it in with the gas, and then run the motorcycle for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, to get that fuel stabilizer into the carburetor. Once you've done that and you're not going to be riding it for a few months, then what you want to do is turn the fuel tank off, turn the petcock, they call it, the fuel valve off, and then there's a screw in the carburetor. You want to open up a quarter turn and drain all the fuel out of the carburetor. This will keep any gunk from building up on those critical components in the carburetor. And of course close the fuel drain valve, and then you're good. You can also get a trickle charger. The Navi that I got here has it all wired up for a trickle charger, so I just have to pull the cord out from under the seat, plug it in, and it will keep the battery charged up. And a trickle charger will charge your battery up to 13.5 volts, something like that, and then it will shut off. And when the battery voltage drops down, when the battery starts losing power just from sitting there over winter, then the trickle charger will kick back in and charge it back up so that the battery doesn't become dead and the battery cells sulfate, which means then you have to get a new battery. So these are very good devices to have for winter. So the dealer cleaned out the carburetor, but I don't think they actually emptied the gas out of the tank. So I still had what I am assuming is bad gas in that tank. So what I wanted to do was run it through a full tank of gas and get the gas out of it as quickly as possible. So the bike wouldn't idle. I had to crank up the idle speed screw clockwise about 1 1/4 turns to keep it idling when I had the choke on. And that went on for a couple of gas tank fulls. Finally, it started idling quite reliably at the higher RPM. And after about, I don't know, 5 or 6 tankfuls, I was able to adjust the idle speed all the way back down. And it was idling reliably and fine. So there was probably bad gas still in that bike. It took a few tanks to clear it out, and then the idle started working properly. So let's look at the actual fuel mileage, shall we? So here you see a graph with my fuel mileage, and at the top these are all the totals here. So $16.45 in gas, 368 kilometers. This is the odometer counter, the final numbers, which works out 368.2 kilometers is 228.7 miles. And then we can calculate in liters because gas stations have the liters in Canada, and so that's a total 9.79 liters, and the gallons which is 2.16 gallons, not very much for gas. The average mile per gallon is 106. And then I've got the average price per liter and the kilometers per liter. And of course the dollars per kilometer. So I'm running around 4 to 5 cents per kilometer, which is really economical. So I went through the first tank full, which was about 74 kilometers, and fueled that up, and I was only getting 85.1 kilometers, or 85.1 miles per gallon. The thing to remember is the Canadian gallon is bigger than the US gallon, so you'll probably see lower numbers if you're using a US gallon. So that one was a little disappointing because Honda says you should be getting 110. On the second tank full, and this is just running around the city, running up to about 60 kilometers an hour, and so I was running between 30 to 60 kilometers an hour to break it in, and I'm still doing that. And on the second tank, once I got rid of that bad fuel, the fuel mileage went up to 108 miles per gallon, pretty close to what Honda is claiming as 110 miles per gallon should be possible. Then the third tank, now the fuel mileage was up to 115 miles per gallon. And the next one was pretty much the same, 116.2, and this final one was 113. So I am getting fuel mileage that Honda says I should be getting, and sometimes it's a little bit higher. The difficulty with trying to measure the miles per gallon is because you may not always fill the tank to the exact same level. So having an average is a better way to go. That way you can average it out over several days and different types of terrain. So I typically am running it between 30 to 60 kilometers per hour. I'm about, as you can see here, 371 kilometers, so I've got to go up to about 600 kilometers, and then it will need an oil change and check the valves on it, and that should make it good until I get up to the next service, which I believe is 2,500 miles, something like that. So on the Honda Navi, I'm getting pretty accurate numbers here. I'm getting about 23 kilometers per liter. Now the Navi has a very small gas tank. It's only 0.9 gallons US. Not very big. And if you're out riding, doing any number of miles, you will be able to see the gas gauge start going down rather quickly, which is disappointing. I'm hoping to be able to add in a second fuel tank and connect it all up so that I can have a gravity feed from a second tank going into the front tank here. So when I'm out riding, I can just turn on a valve and top up the fuel as I'm going, or draw from two tanks at the same time. Depends. If the fuel tanks are at about the same level, then there shouldn't be any flow from one to the other. If I want it to empty from a rear tank into the front tank, then I want the rear tank higher up. So, but it's quite impressive, and you won't guess how much this bike actually cost me. I got roughly, I think it was over $1,200 break on the price because it's 2022 and it's been sitting for a long time. Dealer wasn't able to sell it, and so I got this for just a little over $2,000. A vehicle that will give me, around in the city, mind you, The Navis will get up to around 50 mile per hour sometimes, but they quite reliably get up to 60 to 70 kilometers an hour, which is great for riding in the cities on the slower roads. And the acceleration is quite good. It isn't at all slow. Yeah, you're going to be accelerating about the same pace as the traffic. Now, some people have been saying in the US they're only getting like 50 miles per gallon. Okay, so we have to understand that this engine is designed to work around 60 to 70 kilometers an hour, where you will get really good fuel mileage if you've got the throttle cranked open all the time, or you grab a fistful of throttle every time you get going. You're going to go through that gas very quickly. So it's driving habits. I have found that cracking the throttle open about an eighth to quarter turn is all I need, and it gets up to speed fairly quickly in traffic. I rarely need to crack open the throttle any more than halfway, unless I'm going up a hill and I need to get up to speed a little quicker. So you can get really good fuel mileage on this Honda Navi for a few $1,000s. The new ones, I believe, are around $3,000, and then another $500 for dealer fees on top of that. But fortunately, if you look around, you might be able to get a new one with low or no miles on it for a very low price, and I'm really enjoying this. It's great for buzzing around town. You just, it's automatic transmission. The actual technology or definitions for this kind of transmission is a variator. So a variator is a pulley, and the pulley, as the pulley narrows down, the belt moves further and further to the outside of the pulley, because it's kind of angled like this. So as the sides of the pulley come together, the belt rides further and further out. And that's where it gears up. It's really smooth. It's smoother than a car transmission. It beats a car transmission hands down. Quarter turn on the throttle, and it just keeps accelerating. It has a lot of power for the size, considering it's only 109 cc's. I don't think you'll find that it lags in power. It may not be the fastest thing out there. If you like drag racing with other people in cars, I don't think you're going to win. But if you're in normal city traffic, you can keep up to them very comfortably. It gets up to speed very quickly. And that's all due to having a variator transmission instead of gears. The thing people don't usually consider with a small motorcycle, if you had a 100cc motorcycle like this with gears, very rarely is the engine going to be operating at its best performance, because you got low power, so you're going to have to really rev it to get the maximum power out of the engine. And while you're doing that, you're accelerating, but then you've got to shift gears, whereas the Navi doesn't. It just keeps pulling. So your acceleration on the Navi feels quite a bit better than a small motorcycle, because it's constantly accelerating instead of shifting gears. And every time you shift a gear, you're losing power for a while during the shift, and the bike is slowing down, right? So these features really make the Navi a really good option for getting around in cities. Now, some people do get up to 50 miles an hour, but you're really pushing it then. And during break-in, I wouldn't recommend going much over 60 kilometers an hour. Do a good mix of anywhere from 30 to 60 kilometers on an hour on back streets where there's not much traffic, until you get it broken in, and then gradually you can start running it up to 70 kilometers an hour, and maybe up to 50 miles an hour or 80 kilometers an hour. once it gets fully broken in. So I hope this gives you a good understanding and some actual numbers on fuel mileage for the Navi. And I'm surprised a lot of people aren't getting that kind of fuel mileage on it, but it's not a high-powered motorcycle, but within the speed range that it is built to operate, you will get really good mileage if you're not ham-fisted on the throttle. So enjoy. I really enjoyed this motorcycle. It fits the cake. It fits the use that I am using it for right now. And it's actually, I'm surprised it's actually getting about the same fuel mileage as my CBR 125. And my CBR 125, of course, will get up to 80, 90, maybe 100 kilometers an hour, sometimes 120 under ideal conditions, going faster. But then again, it's fuel injection. This is carburetor. And so carburetors are not quite as marginally with fuel, but on the other hand, they're significantly less complicated to fix and maintain. You just buy a carburetor, slap a new one on there. If you got problems with the old one, and away you go. With fuel injection system, you never quite know where the problems are. It requires more technology, more shop equipment to check where's the problem. So it's quite a bit more involved, but for someone who wants an easy to get around machine that's easy to maintain, I don't think you're going to find anything better than the Navi.